Welcome to Protect, Suicide Prevention Training Podcast for Healthcare Professionals. I'm Manan, Consultant Psychiatrist, Founder, and Head of Faculty at Progress Guide.
Hi everyone, it's Mahi, your Protect podcast host. Today is episode 6 of season 3, Enact and Evaluate. So Manan, what have you been up to this week?
Well, on the 9th of July, so the Tuesday gone, we had the webinar for NDIS.
How did that go?
Quite good, actually. So you can see that there is quite a big need in the NDIS sector because a lot of the support workers are supporting people with lots of complex needs, and many of them struggle with suicidality. So that's what I tended to focus on. Well, that's what I covered in the webinar, yeah. And essentially ended up running out of time, as is always the case. It was supposed to be an hour, and I think I went on for 1 hour, 10 minutes, and still felt that hadn't covered half the things I wanted to cover. Because I really want to focus in on trauma-informed care in these safety planning webinars. And a lot of the people in the NDIS sector who are in the receipt of care packages, they have had a lot of adverse childhood experiences, intergenerational trauma, family violence, domestic violence. So it is really important that we are able to approach these safety planning conversations with a trauma-informed lens. So that's what I focused on. But it was good. It was a good event, good engagement. And I've been contacted by a few NDIS providers to...
Oh, that's quite good.
Yeah, like they want to get the training for their support workers. So we will have a package for them that they can put on their training, what do you call them?
Like platform.
Yeah, the training platforms that they have and do it as part of their mandatory training. So that's something that I'll be working on, putting a package together for these NDIS providers, which I think will be of benefit to new support workers and even those who have been support workers for a while, because these are not skills that you can just pick up on the job. You do need a bit of...
You need to develop them over time.
You need to develop them over time, but you need a bit of theoretical foundation as well in terms of what is it you're trying to achieve and have some clarity of thought behind the conversation. Otherwise, the conversation can meander on, and the person, even if you have talked about safety planning, the person doesn't register it, doesn't retain it, cannot recall it in their moment of crisis. So really important that you have some theoretical underpinnings and some clarity of thought when you are engaging the person in guided discovery of their strengths and how they would navigate through a crisis, or when the early warning signs are there, or if it's a full-blown emergency.
Well, that's quite exciting. Are there any other events coming up?
Oh, there's the big one. A whole week of delivering training in Malaysia. So that's end July, early August. So I actually need to get a few things sorted for that trip. I don't think I'll be able to get the 7 Safe Steps book ready for that as I was intending to do. But I've made some progress, but I really want the book to be just so, because this other thing has come up as well, which is the first African Health Summit, which is in Accra, Ghana. So I have to get a recording sorted for that. So I won't have enough time.
Finish that 7 Safe Steps book.
Yeah, and to get it launched on Amazon as well. So I don't think...
It's quite a big job for not much time left.
What is it? We are already the 12th of July. So there's no way I'll be able to get that done with this new commitment for the first African Health Summit.
And when is that?
So that's on July 25th and 26th.
So just before Malaysia, basically.
Yes, in the week before. And one of the advantages of a connected world is that distance, it's all virtual. So yes, I'm traveling to Malaysia, but this will be live streamed, but I have to get a recording done just in case the live stream doesn't work. So
what are you exactly talking about though?
It's about resilience in the workplace. So the summit theme is enhancing mental health and general well-being at the workplace, a call to action. That's the theme. And given the work that we have been doing in terms of living with values, I thought it was pertinent to talk on the same topic.
Oh, and talking about living with values, just before I forget, I just wanted to mention a beautiful message from Lorraine, one of our podcast listeners. She loved the concept of ikigai and obaitori and wants to know more about other Japanese concepts you mentioned in the passing.
Yes, I did.
In particular, she made a statement about obaitori and how similar the different springtime flowers in Japan look like.
Oh, if you're wondering what Mahi is talking about and you haven't heard the previous episode, towards the end of it, I think we were discussing life goals, and Mahi mentioned that different people may have goals that come to fruition in different times. And I drew a parallel on the concept of obaitori, which states that flowers, cherry, plum, peach, and apricot, so those flowers which blossom in springtime in Japan, they all blossom in their own time, and so do people.
Yes, that's right. And Laurie went on to say, and I'll just read off my phone here, this is very pertinent as all 4 flowers look very similar, so it is easy to expect them all to blossom at the same time. But it is important to remember not to compare each other, and although they look similar, there are subtle differences, just like between people. So guess what?
What?
I got curious and went looking for the subtle differences in the flowers. I know we're going a bit off topic here, but I have to share the findings of my research with our listeners.
Okay, go on.
Okay, I've made some notes. The differences are indeed subtle. Plum is the first one to blossom in early Feb to March, and the petals are evenly rounded and the flowers. Plum blossoms grow individually as opposed to in a pair or a bunch. Next up in early March comes the peach. The petals of the peach flowers are shaped like teardrops. They grow in pairs from short stalks that sprout from the same branch. Between late March and April is the cherry. Unlike the previous 2 flower petals, the cherry blossoms have a little indent or split at the end of their petals, and they bloom in clusters. Apricot flowers and plum flowers are deceptively similar. The main difference is in their sepals. Both fruit types have white flowers, white filaments, and yellow anthers. But apricots have pink sepals and plums have green sepals, which gives the flower a completely different and very distinctive aesthetic. The other difference to note is that apricot flowers have insignificant stems, appearing to grow directly from the branch.
How on earth am I going to remember all of that? And well, thank you for the crash course on Japanese spring flowers. But so let me see if I retained anything. So you said that one of the flowers was split. The petals were split. That's the cherry. And the plum, the petals are rounded, and peach, the petals they were like teardrops, right?
Yeah.
That's what I remember. And I think it was the plum they were very similar to, but the sepals for apricot
they're different colors, yeah.
They're different colors, so not like the green sepals.
The point is that they're all similar, but with subtle differences.
And I guess that was a point that I made last time as well, that you cannot compare people and people's goals because, there are differences and they all come to fruition and blossom at a different time. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think I've turned this into a gardening podcast, but it was interesting.
I can see that you got really hooked onto it.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by the effort that you had put into it.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Laurie for sending me down this rabbit hole. It is always lovely to hear from our listeners. And there's this new cool feature on the podcast, just I think below the name of the episode on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you'll see a link to send a message or ask a question. So let's get back on track. Manan, what are we covering today?
So we're actually into the home stretch. The final section in Hope is Enact and Evaluate. Here we will look at breaking up values-aligned goals into values-aligned actions, as well as simple strategy of continuous reflection as how we are traveling in terms of living our values on a day-to-day basis.
But first, I think we should do a recap.
Sure. So we began with action appraisal, actions that help, actions that hinder, hurt, or harm. We talked through how the simple question, does it help or does it not, can guide reflection on past or present challenges, and will it help can guide planning for future challenges.
And the Hope View should give you your top 2 helpful and harmful actions amidst a crisis.
We then discussed what were values, how did values differ from goals and actions, how do values differ from rules and commandments. We talked through the questions that might help us discover our values, as well as why they are important.
We then looked at different life domains and undertook a values clarification exercise using the values list.
So from the app, you can print out the values list or just look at it on your phone as well. And there were 4 life domains. For each of these life domains or certain important aspects of any of these domains, you would know the most important value that you want to live if you have completed this step, which was the second step, own my values in the HOPE framework.
And we then identified goals in each life domain.
And how by living our values, these goals may be achieved. And even when the goals are unachievable, living a life of values is enriching and fulfilling.
So in the third step, you spent time identifying the most important people and your life goals in the most relevant domains at this stage of your life.
So the proof of the pudding, of course, is in the eating, in life's pursuits. Living by our values involves taking actions, values-guided, committed actions.
And all through, you have been linking a life lived with values to overcoming adversity and building resilience.
Yes, so a life goal may be quite daunting to begin with, but it feels particularly challenging when adversity has pushed one off course or a deeply meaningful pursuit has broken down. The first step is the hardest. Rebuilding is a long-drawn process. The person may not believe that they can ever overcome the obstacles or feel connected to the strength they need to reinitiate this journey again.
But according to Laozi, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
That's a beautiful thought, and I think we have got that as a quote on the app as well.
It's quite a popular one.
Yeah. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So to begin with, the sphere of control may seem very small and the sphere of concern very large. However, outside the sphere of control is a sphere of influence that lies in between the sphere of control and the sphere of concern. Okay? So the sphere of influence, it's larger than what can be directly controlled. And the beauty of small steps, Laozi's journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, is that once one begins to take actions, the sphere of control enlarges. And things that were previously only in the sphere of influence slowly come into the sphere of control. And the sphere of influence eats into the sphere of concern.
So break down the long journey into smaller steps?
Yes, steps that allows one to take small, values-guided actions in the here and now. This helps build belief that one can get back on course and captain their vessel in line with their values again.
Is it all in the here and now, or are we thinking of long-term actions as well?
So a very effective strategy is to create artificial time capsules. It begins with actions that can be taken in the here and now, actions today. Then there are actions over the coming days to chip away if someone's really struggling at the source of one's troubles or to lay the foundation of a longer-term goal. This is followed by actions over the coming weeks, months, and even years. So in summary, actions can be immediate, short-term, medium-term, and long-term.
So I can see that this approach helps a person live their values the entire journey and not just at the completion or achievement of a life goal. Can you make it more concrete for our listeners with an example?
So let's pick someone of your age, an 18-year-old, okay? And let's look at the different types of values-aligned actions this young person might want to take. And say this young person wants to be a neurosurgeon, okay? That's his life goal. The driving force for this life goal is the loss of a friend to a brain tumor. And he wishes that he could have done something to help his friend, but he was only a teenager himself. So he wants to help others in the future. Okay, so helping is the value that he wants to live.
But it will take 10 years to become a neurosurgeon.
Well, more like 15 if you're lucky. But does he need to wait for 15, 20 years before he can live his value of helping?
Obviously not.
So he can start today, let's say by helping his mother cook lunch or dinner, or helping his elderly neighbor this week, while he's studying for the grades that he needs to get into med school. So helping himself along the path, and then when in med school, he can undertake further activities to be helpful to others, and so it goes on. He might have to hold down a part-time job, let's say in a pizzeria, to pay for the med school fees. He may not enjoy the job as such, but a simple reframe of seeing the job as part of how he will get to live his value of being helpful one day might make the job a desirable action to undertake. So remembering that working in this pizza place is helping him fund his medical training, and if he can stay connected to the fact that that is his life goal and it would allow him to be helpful towards others, that might help him get through some troubled times. And on a daily basis, he can be helpful in the job itself while working with his colleagues. So even when a life goal will take a significant amount of time to achieve, the value, the driving force behind that life pursuit can be lived right here, right now, today.
So you want to break up the goal and categorize the actions into those that are immediate, short, medium, and long term?
So what we are proposing in terms of actions is not that different to the first step in the HOPE framework when we talked about identifying what is helpful, what is harmful.
Mm-hmm.
So now we are doing it in line with your values, and what is in line with your values and what is not in line with your values. The only difference is that these are actions in pursuit of your life goals rather than actions taken in the midst of a crisis or a challenging situation.
But what comes next?
So once you have listed the actions, the next question, of course, is how likely are you to carry them out?
Actually, before that, I think I should mention, remember the best way to do this is to download the app so you can follow along. Same warning, don't touch your phone if you're listening while driving. If you scroll down to the bottom of your HOPE view, you will reach the Enact and Evaluate section. Touch Add to personalize the final section. The first thing that you do is to select one of your life goals that you have selected in the previous step. You can also see the value that underpins this life goal on the image. Next step after choosing the goal that you want to work on is to add small, simple steps that you will undertake.
So these actions could be those that are repeated often, that you want to turn them into habits. We have an entire section called Habit Maker and Habit Tracker. We'll pick that up in a future episode. So actions like writing in your gratitude journal on a daily basis or going for a 30-minute run. So these actions could be also one-off, like, say, going to watch Moulin Rouge or paying the annual gym membership.
And you can add, edit, and delete actions as you see fit.
So before judging the likelihood of an action being enacted, it is important you become specific as possible in terms of what you will do. And pick actions that you are likely to do. Ask yourself on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 means I will definitely do this no matter what, and 0 means there is no way I'm ever going to do this, and 5 means it's a 50-50 whether I'll do this or not. How likely is it that I will actually do this? Okay, actually do this. If you score yourself above 7, that's ideal. If you score 7 or below, that doesn't bode well for success. So you need to come up with a smaller, simpler, easier action. Keep scaling the action down until you can score at least an 8.
Let's say if fitness is an important value for you and you've set it for yourself, a goal of losing 15 kilos in 6 months, what kind of actions am I evaluating for a 7+ score?
So you can set yourself an unrealistic action of, say, attending gym 3 times a week straight away. Okay, it will be only on paper and your scales will not show a lower weight. So you need to think about smaller actions, like renewing my gym membership, or a 30-minute run may be easier than thinking I'll go to the gym 3 times. But even that is tough when you are doing nothing, say, regarding your fitness, or you're struggling with depression and not leaving the house. So scaling back to, say, just locating the yoga mat might actually mean that you will do something in this regard rather than nothing. A specific action that you can commit to carrying out is better than one that sounds good, but it is unlikely to happen.
I guess it goes back to the spheres you talked about.
Yes, it is through completed actions that you will enlarge your sphere of influence. We also recommend that once a week, you revisit your actions and evaluate how you got on. For the repeat actions, tick them off as achieved if you have completed them 50% of the time. 50% of the time, there was a chance to do it. This is a subjective judgment call. You would have a sense of whether you have carried out an action more than half the time the opportunity presented itself. It's not an exact science. For the one-time actions, I guess it's simpler. Tick them off if you have completed them.
And how about putting a number on living by my value?
So if you are someone who likes to quantify subjective things, you may use the bull's eye exercise. So it was designed by a Swedish ACT therapist, Tobias Lundgren. It builds on the values clarification and values alignment work that you have done using the HOPE framework. So it is quite simple in its makeup. Select a life domain, select a goal that you have in that life domain. For example, at work, you want to get promoted and become a manager. Underpinning that life goal is your value of sincerity. Now, we would like you to think about all the different ways in which you have shown your sincerity, genuineness and honesty at work in the last week. Some of them will relate to the actions you listed you will take. Then ask yourself, where do you stand today or say in this week in relation to the value of sincerity at work? Has that been reflected in all your actions, some of your actions, or none of your actions? You can quantify this through that same simple rating scale of 0 to 10. 0, not living by my values. So on that dartboard where kind of Lundgren talks about, 0 would be outside the dartboard altogether. And 10 would be completely living by my values, so you're hitting the bullseye. And you can repeat this values-aligned goals in other domains as well. So if the exercise is repeated often, a person can begin to develop a sense of where they are on the dartboard on a given day or in a given week. If you have 4 values-aligned goals, 1 in each domain, remember the likelihood of you hitting the bullseye 4 times is unlikely. And if you're saying that, yes, it's bang on, bullseye every time, I think you're telling porcupines that never really happens. Mm-hmm. The reality is, as human beings, we are all fallible and we move up and down on that sliding scale of 0 to 10.
So keeping the same numbering system, 0 being not at all and 10 being all the time, the next step is to ask yourself whether you have been living the value while pursuing this life goal or in the relationship you're reflecting on.
Spot on. So we recommend you do this on a weekly basis. Revisit the action list in your app. If you are rating yourself towards the outer rim, make the action smaller and simpler. And if you did come close to hitting the bullseye and there were actions you took this week which are not captured in your values aligned actions, then add them in so that you can repeat them.
And then?
Well, finally jot down some notes for the future, what worked well, and even better if. These reflective notes will guide you in the future week.
And you can access these scores on weekly reflections?
Yes, so you can go to the journal viewer, which is in the logs tab. So right at the bottom, you see logs under which there are lots of things. The habit tracker, habit maker, alcohol diary, mood diary, medication viewer, those kind of things. And if you scroll to the bottom of that, you can see the journal viewer, so you can access it that way. Also on the main HOPE screen, when you go down to enact and evaluate, you will see kind of reflective notes. So there's a link there, and that will take you to the notes that you have made on that specific goal that you are working on.
Okay.
And through this reflective process, you know what? You need to make failure part of the growth equation and keep learning. Failure and mistakes show that you're doing something different, something new. And that's why you're making errors. Mistakes and errors are all symbols of the fact that you are learning and you're growing. So keep reflecting and learning from what worked well and replicate the values-guided actions and keep trying out new things as part of your even better if.
Well, it seems like we're out of time.
Well, thanks to the Japanese flowers, we are indeed.
Stop. So any last thoughts before we say goodbye?
If you keep learning from your weekly reflections, you will be able to work out what takes me towards the person I want to be and what takes me away from the person I want to be. What helps me live my values? What hinders me from living my values? And we are back to where we started. I'm actually hopeful that embracing this framework, the HOPE framework based on acceptance and commitment therapy, will infuse your life with the richness of values and help you captain your vessel safely even in the darkest night. Do this together with a loved one and have a go at capturing hope and being resilient in the face of life storms. Have a wonderful day.
Goodbye.